Today marks 5 months since October 7th Hamas terrorist attack in Israel, and this morning negotiations to release some of the remaining hostages reportedly have stalled. The White House says 134 people still are being held captive inside Gaza. That includes 8 Americans. Joining us now, the father and stepmother of one of those Israeli-American hostages, Jonathan Dekelhen and Gillian Kay. Their 35-year-old son, Sagi Dekelhen, was captured by Hamas terrorists on October 7th while trying to protect his neighborhood. Tonight, Jonathan and Gillian will attend President Biden's State of the Union address as guests of 2 members of Congress. Thank you both so much for being with us. We're so terribly sorry for what you've gone through, this ordeal of the last 5 months. First question to you is, have you heard anything? Is there any communication? What are you hearing from the State Department about how your son is doing?
Well, really the only thing we know about Sagi's condition is, rather old information. In late November, early December, there was a hostage release, about 100 hostages, women and children. Of those, 40 came from our kibbutz community. And some of them were able to tell us that they had seen Sagi in the tunnels underneath Khan Yunis. And at that time, which is 3 months ago now, he was alive but injured. Since that time, we have heard nothing, nor have any of the other hostage families heard anything other than the handful of hostages who have seen their loved ones in Hamas propaganda films, hostage films, over the course of the last couple of months.
Gillian, of course, our hearts and our thoughts are with you guys in this extraordinarily difficult time. If you could just tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how the Israeli government is handling this situation. Do you think enough is being done to prioritize bringing these hostages home? Have they been able to be helpful to you in any way?
I'll speak to the first part, and I'll have my husband speak to the second about communication with the Israeli government. There are a lot of players here, and we are pushing every country, every player, anyone involved in the negotiations to do more, to do everything that they can to bring all of the hostages home alive. At this point, that's all that we can do, is just keep pushing and advocating for the Israeli government to prioritize the hostages, for the American administration, who has been wonderful, but to keep pushing the issue of the hostages coming home and pushing that with Hamas. You can speak to the issue of communication.
Yeah. Look, the fact of the matter is that until all of the hostages, those that are still alive, and we don't know if our son is still alive and in what condition he is, but the job will only be done for the Israeli government and for all of those who would like to see this crisis over and for the war to end, of course. It will only be done when all of them, living and unfortunately deceased, are back home. So it's rather binary. The Israeli government will have done enough when all of the hostages are home, regardless of the conduct of the war on the ground in Gaza.
Jonathan and Judy, this is Susan Page. We're also sorry. We hope for the best for your son. You're going to be at the State of the Union address tonight. What would you like to hear from President Biden tonight?
I think we want to hear what we've been hearing, and we want to continue to hear it. We want the issue of the hostages, not just the American hostages, all of the hostages. We want that issue to be raised up front and center. We want to hear that they will be tireless, the American administration continue to be tireless in their pushing for negotiated, if it's ceasefire that requires the release of all the hostages. We want to hear that that's still a priority with the administration, as it's been since October 7th, which we've been really grateful for.
Jonathan, there's really a stunning chapter to this story as well. The last time we spoke to you, Sagi's wife, pregnant with their couple's 3rd child, that beautiful baby since has been born. What can you tell us about the baby?
Well, little Shahar, their 3rd daughter, is a marvel. She brings us little rays of light in this horrific time. But the name itself, her name itself, I think is really, it's double-edged, because her name in Hebrew, Shachar, means dawn. So in some ways, it's hopeful for the future. But she was also named after the daughter of dear friends of ours, who was murdered along with two siblings, their parents, and the grandmother on October 7th on our kibbutz. So, we embrace her, we love her. She joins our large and ever-expanded family. And so it's a blessing, but also a reminder every day of what has been lost and what still needs to be done. I would only add, if I may, about the State of the Union. I think it's quite remarkable that of the 7 families that are going to be represented there, all U.S. citizens, the invitations that were issued are wall-to-wall from congressional members. And I think, obviously, the Biden administration, or it needs to be said, the administration itself has been remarkably transparent with us and helpful. But the fact that there's wall-to-wall support amongst Congress people, enough so that even within our family, there are vast differences in the political orientation of those Congress people who invited us. It's a sure sign, or as much of a sign as anything can be, of the solidarity in Congress, and I hope among the American people, for the need to get these hostages home. The 8 Americans remaining there, and the rest of the 120-something other hostages, because Israel will never be whole again, and we cannot allow Hamas to win this fight simply by having all of the hostages die in Hamas captivity.
Jonathan and Jillian, obviously people's attention spans are not as long as they used to be. We're in an age of social media where it seems that people's attention spans about 14 seconds long. What would you like Americans to focus on? Not just tonight, while the speech is going on and we're talking about your son and the other hostages, but in the coming days and weeks, what do Americans need to focus on and keep close to their hearts about your son and the other hostages?
Well, I would say this. It is, on the one hand, we feel a great deal of support from Congress people, as we've said, from the administration, and from some groups. What I think we find strange is that there isn't more outrage in the American streets and amongst American people about what actually happened on October 7th. We can have our differing opinions about Israel's conduct of the war. That's legitimate. Even within Israel, there are differing opinions about how the war is being pursued. That being said, the fact that there are 8 Americans still being held hostage, and that free civilian people were ripped from their homes, and young people ripped from a concert about love and peace by a savage terrorist organization, and 1,400 people were slaughtered that day. I think that mere fact is, it has to be in our consciousness, because it is a very bad sign for all humanity if an event like that, again, regardless of what we think about the war itself, if an event like that is simply pushed aside and ignored because of pre-existing opinions about the conflict in general in the Middle East. This is really a watershed moment, I think, for the world that seeks some kind of justice and some kind of humanity.
And if I could just add quickly, the word hostage or hostages we can become so numb to it. It's a word, it's a category, it's not real. There aren't people connected to it. And I hope that people will really say their names, understand that these are individual fathers, mothers, daughters, sons. These are people who are real people who have real lives and real loved ones. They're not just a category of hostage, American, Israeli, it doesn't matter. And that we need to keep that humanitarian understanding and issue really up in front in our hearts. And we've had that connection across positions, across the political spectrum. We've had that ability to really connect with people when we look at it as a human issue.
His name is Sagid Dekelhen. He's been held for 5 months today, one of 8 Americans and 134 total hostages being held by Hamas. Jonathan Dekelhen and Jillian Kay, thank you so much for your time. We continue to hope and pray for the safe return of your son. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that does it for us this morning. We will see you right back here tomorrow morning. Jose Diaz-Balart picks up the coverage after a quick final break.